I said this the other day, and I understand that there are countries and there are people and communities that are fleeing absolute horrific violence, certain death, drug cartels, all of these things. But some days I look around and I'm like, why would anybody want to come to America? Right? Like what you're facing, and I mean those that are doing so through treacherous conditions, but I don't even know if you're a tourist. America sure as hell wouldn't be on my top 10 list if I didn't live here. It is violent. It is dangerous, right? Like we're telling people, oh, come visit us. Meanwhile, you could get shot up in a movie theater. You could get shot up going to the grocery store. Oh, you want to come and pray at your synagogue, at your mosque, at your church? You can get shot up there. Right? Like, oh, kids are, we have an exchange program. I wouldn't send any kid on an exchange program to the United States. You're playing Russian roulette, literally. This country is dangerous, and the love affair between guns and white supremacy is our undoing. And yet they don't see just how ridiculous it is for you to be able to say that Republicans care about families when they vote against families every opportunity that they have, whether it be a child tax credit or maternity leave, right? Or parental leave, right? Or masks for your children or vaccines. Like they don't care. So how is it that Democrats still can't message that and just tell the truth?
Yeah, it's because we're afraid of our own shadow. We're terrible at proactive messaging. We cave to Republican bad faith messaging and attacks. You don't articulate your own position. You run away from the word progressive. You've never seen a conservative run away from the word conservative. They embrace it. And you don't launch a counterattack, right? Like I feel like this week in particular, while they are attacking mask mandates and vaccine mandates, while we're seeing these insane nutty truckers, right, who are not truckers, who we know are funded in part by right-wing movements, both in America and Europe, tied to the Republican Party and conservative movement, where many of their leaders are far-right white nationalists, where they for 3 weeks have disrupted the supply chain. This is the irony. We are really pissed off about lockdowns, so we're going to lock down the economy. We're really pissed off about supply chain, so we're going to F up the supply chain. We're literally going to F up the economy and F up supplies and goods and movement and national security, but we tolerate it. So why do we tolerate it? Why do we tolerate them overtaking the Capitol? Why do we tolerate them killing our kids? Because this extremist minority is mostly white. And it's mostly white Christian men. And there's a great study that came out recently that talked about the role of Christian nationalism in the January 6th insurrection. And I just want to read some quotes here,
please,
which is stunning. This is from this report that came out, Christian Nationalism and the January 6th Insurrection, 60 pages and drawing on the work of a number of academics, journalists, and researchers. Came out last week. I feel like it should be like mainstream news, like no one's talking about it. Quote, Christian nationalist support for January 6 rioters has doubled in the past year, while support for prosecuting those rioters has declined by 20%. That suggests, said one of the co-authors, that, quote, this ideology is powerfully connected to a reinterpretation of these events, a powerful motivator of future potential violence. 2/3 of white Americans who strongly support Christian nationalist ideology believe that the 2020 election was rigged. 40% of them think that violence from patriotic Americans might be necessary to save the country. And more than 40% are convinced that Democrats are engaged in, quote, elite child trafficking. Last thing I'll say. Two factors. This is from a New York Times, a really good New York Times piece done by Thomas Edsel, and it's titled, There's a Reason Why Trump Loves the Truckers. He writes this, 2 factors work to lower the likelihood of hate group formation. They write, a higher stock of social capital is associated with fewer hate groups. A greater share of mainline Protestant adherents is associated with fewer hate groups. However, the opposite, Danielle, is true for evangelical Protestant adherents. Quote, for every 10% additional evangelicals in a county, the number of hate groups in that county increases by 17%.
Wow.
How come no one's talking about this?
Wow. So, okay. Let's unpack for a moment.
Please.
So what that last quote just said is that the more evangelical Christians in a community, the more likely that there will be an increase in hate crimes.
Yep. And we know that the base of Donald Trump and the Republicans is white evangelical Christians. And we know now that white evangelical Christians more so are doing a gaslighting about January 6th. We know that they believe in the conspiracy theories, not all of them, ladies and gentlemen, but a significant amount. They're the part and parcel of the right-wing movement. It helped fuel the January 6th violent insurrection. And also last week, I have to bring this up. We're talking about Ottawa. We're talking about extremists who remove the mask. Let's just remind people, because we've already forgotten, and Democrats have already dropped the ball, that the RNC, the Republican National Committee, not some fringe movement, the RNC, proactively decided to censure Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, Republicans, for trying to get at the bottom of the January 6th violent insurrection. And they said the violent insurrection was, in fact, a legitimate form of political discourse done by, quote, ordinary citizens. The truckers who have caused havoc are heroes and patriots. The people attacking mask mandates and vaccine mandates are pro-life Americans. The people who are trying to ban our histories and our stories are people who allegedly care about children and are First Amendment warriors. It's all upside down. It's all projection. It's all white fragility. It's the death rattle of white supremacy. It's gifts for the Democratic Party to message on, and yet we are hijacked. The majority is hijacked by this pro-death movement.
I feel
and
like
it just drives me nuts.
You know, Waj, though, I feel like they're not hijacked by the pro-death movement. They're hijacked by their own inadequacy, right? Because there's only so much blame. Here, the thing that is wonderful about Republicans is that they're just telling you who they are. They're telling you who they are, who matters and who doesn't, and what they are willing to sacrifice, right? In order to ensure and to enshrine their power for decades to come. And so if you, as a Democrat, as a part of leadership, are deciding not to act in response to that, not to shift or take back the narrative, not to offer up to this pro-life, quote unquote, party that they are actually pro-death, to offer up to these white evangelical Christians that no, this is not, you are not God-loving, right? You are actually hate mongers that are using the Bible as your way to degrade, discriminate, and suppress other people, as you always have. These are the same groups of people.
That's the key part right there. That you always have. That's the key part. That's the key part.
The people who owned slaves, who were the biggest proponents of Jim Crow, who were they? They were the ones that were going to church on Sunday and beating the shit out of their enslaved people, right? When they got home and using the Bible as their justification for violence. So how is it that we don't interrogate these truths? Right? Because it would hold up a mirror, Waj, to their faces, and they don't want to look.
Well, that's exactly it, right? I mean, and Robert George wrote a really good book. He comes from the white Christian tradition about white too long, and he kind of connects the dots and talks about how we have to name it, we have to acknowledge it, that the roots of white supremacy are tied to a white Christian nationalism. This white Christian supremacy. Dylan Roof was a white Christian supremacist terrorist. They often leave that part out. That motivated his ideology of hate. And we don't want to confront these demons. We don't want to name it. We don't want to acknowledge it because, like you said, it makes some people uncomfortable. So instead, what we do, ban the history. Yeah. Like like if you really think about it, we joke about this. But if CRT was to if these quote unquote manufactured threat against the CRT, right, which is not taught in public schools, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, but if you take it to its logical conclusion, you have to erase Black History Month.
Oh, they will. But it's coming, right? Because what is going to happen is that Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, Women's History Month, well, they're going to come for all of that. It makes people feel uncomfortable. Right? That's right. Why should we, we're teaching all of this anyway. Why do we have to have this separate month? And they will look at it and frame it as if it is some type of progressive segregation. Right? Oh, our kids are learning this anyway. Why does the bulletin board need to highlight particular Black people and particular Latinx people? No, we don't need that. It's all coming. And the thing that people need to see is that it's been coming for decades. They've shown their hand this entire time, but without anybody stopping them, they're going to run roughshod over the country.
And if you think me and Danielle are nutty, let me just give you some examples about that. And why, this framing, this both sides framing, the common man, the salt of the earth, the Rust Belt, the economic anxiety is all just failure of institutions and our media colleagues to call it out for what it is, because it makes them uncomfortable. And we get hijacked by the rage and the anxiety of a extremist minority, right? Loudoun County, one of the wealthiest counties in Virginia. The starting ground of the CRT manufactured fear. Wealthy county, rich white parents, one of the last counties to desegregate in America. That's where it started. Most of the folks who came to the January 6th violent insurrection, white folks, white Christian nationalists, MAGA supporters, not poor folks, middle class, upper middle class folks, right? These Ottawa truckers, most of them aren't truckers.
Nope.
Many of them don't live in Ottawa, right?
Nope.
So, but using it and abusing it for their white Christian nationalism, I'm going to just call it for what it is. Most of them, not all of them, white Christian nationalism, and perfectly fine, completely subverting our order, our security, our comfort for their comfort, right? And you look at those three examples of a CRT, you look at the mask mandate bans and the vaccine bans, you look at January 6th and look at Ottawa, it's a trend. The majority has to be hijacked by the anger and the anxiety of the white minority, who then projects onto all of us everything that they're doing. And what they want us to do is to bend the knee to them. We will allow you to stay in this country as long as you stay quiet.
Yep.
You know your place.
Yep.
You're grateful that we give you a room in the house. If you're not grateful, go back to where you came from. And as long as my needs are met first and my anxieties are tended to first, then maybe we'll talk about your anxiety.